For as far back as I can remember, my father's day began at 4 a.m. He would be up before anyone else in the household. After saying his prayers in the breaking light of the day, he would go on a walk to visit his coconut grove. We lived in Rameshwaram, a small temple town, on an island in Tamil Nadu. This being on the east coast of India, dawn would break early, and our day's schedule followed the rhythm of the rising and setting of the sun and the sea waves. The sound of the sea was a constant presence in our lives. Storms and cyclones blew by with regularity during the tumultuous monsoon months. We lived in our ancestral home, a fairly large house made of limestone and brick, built sometime in the 19th century. It was never luxurious but was filled with love. My father had a boat building business. Additionally, he was also a owner of a small coconut grove some 4 miles away from our house. That was where my father would be headed for in the early morning hours. His walking circuit was well established and he rarely deviated from it. First, he would step out into Mosque Street, where our house was located. It was a small, predominantly Muslim locality, not too far from the Shiva temple that has made our own town famous for centuries. He would then walk through the narrow lanes of the town, on to the more open roads leading to the coconut grove, and finally wend his way through the groves to the pitch of land. Today, I try to imagine him walking on those quiet roads long before the day made its many demands on him. Ours was a large family, and I am sure there were many pressure on him to see to our needs. But at that hour, I think of him listening intently to the sea, to the ever-present ravens and other birds that swooped and flew all around, woken up by the rising sun like him. Perhaps he said his prayers to himself as he walked, or thought of his family with a calm, uncluttered early morning mind. I never did ask him what went through his mind on his long daily walk. For when does a young boy really have the time to reflect in this way about his father? But I always sure that the morning walk added something to his personality, an element of calm that was apparent even to strangers. My father was not a person with much formal education. Neither did he ever acquire much wealth in his long lifetime. Yet he was one of the wisest, truly generous men I have had the fortune of knowing. Our mosque was the focal point of the locality, and my father was the man everyone turned to in their hour of need. They believed that he was truly connected to God. I remember going to the mosque to say my prayers with him. He made sure we never missed any of our prayers, and neither did it enter our minds to shock his duty. After saying our namaz, when we would step out onto the road, groups of people would inevitably be there, waiting to talk to him and share their worries with him. What did these men and women see in him? He was not a preacher, nor a teacher. He was just a man who lived by his convictions and tenets of his religion. What did he give them? I now think that it was his mere presence that calmed them and gave them hope. He said prayers for them, and many people would offer him bowls of water. He would dip his fingerprints in them and say a prayer, after which the water would be taken away to be given to the sick. Later, many of these people would come to the house and thank him for having cured their near and dear ones. Why did he do this? And where did he get the peacefulness and generosity of heart to talk to people, confront them, comfort them, and pray for them in the midst of the busyness of his own life? He was a humble boat owner. Life was certainly not easy for him. What with finding the best ways to make ends meet in a tiny temple town cut off from the mainland. Yet, Never once did I see my father turn away anyone who wanted to unburden himself by talking to him. Without doubt, he was a deeply spiritual man with some kind of connection with God. I believe his spirituality came from being a learned man. He knew the scriptures and could bring out their essential truth to even the youngest inquiring mind. When I asked him questions, he would always reply and attempt to explain in simple, straightforward Tamil. Once I asked him, "Why do these people come to you? And what do you really do for them?" He simply still stays with me nearly 5 decades later. Whenever human beings, it was his reply. He replied, whenever human beings find themselves alone, as a natural reaction, they start looking for company. Whenever they are in trouble, they look for someone to help them. Every recurrent anguish, longing, and desire finds its own special helper. For the people who come to me in distress, I am but a go-between in their effort to ward off demonic forces with prayers and offerings. Then he went on to tell me something about prayers and its power over man that still resonates despite many years in the field of scientific research. He said to look for help outside is never the final answer. One must understand the difference between a fear-ridden vision of destiny and the vision that enables us to seek the enemy of fulfillment within ourselves. When troubles come, try to understand the relevance of your sufferings. Adversity always presents opportunities for introspection. His advice meant that in the many setbacks and defeats that destiny has handled me, I have always been able to look within for strength. I traveled far, far away from life in Rameshwaram. My journey took me to places I had never imagined visiting, from the cockpit of a fighter jet to the highest office in the nation. Yet, it was always his words that came back to me. There is a divine power that looks over us, that gently lifts us from our sadness, failures, and miseries. If we open our minds and let it will guide us to our true place. Release yourself from the bindings that limit you and let that power overtake your mind. And that's when you will be on the road to true happiness and peace. This is what I imagine him saying to me whenever I am worried. I am now 82 years of age. Like him, my day, even today, begins with a walk. Every morning, I savor the sight of new sun and beaming light in the sky before the sun appears, the cool breeze and the sweet call of the birds. I understand how this short time of the day binds us to nature. Each morning is different in the way the elements come together for that day. It is a little drama nature puts up only for us, and I can't stop marveling at it. Unlike him, I often find myself in different cities and towns in the mornings because of my travels, but the early morning peace and calm is the same everywhere. Whenever I am, I can find a tree that is great with age, where birds dwell and go busily about the day with a new dawn, whose leaves wave gently to me in the morning breeze. It may be a warm day or a bitterly cold, misty morning when my breath fogs the air in front of me. But this time, away from the cares and worries that the rest of the day will invariably bring means so much to me. At my home in Delhi, there is a grand old Arjuna tree. Somehow my feet always pull me towards it when I walk in my garden. It is usually laden with honeycombs and is home to hundreds of birds, especially parrots. The dignity, beauty, and stature of this tree brings memories of my father to mind. and I even have silent conversation with it. Once I wrote this poem where I imagined what the tree would say to me if only it could. Oh my friend Kalam, I crossed age 100 like your father and mother. Every day morning you walk an hour. I also see you on full moon nights walking with a thinking mood. I know, my friend, the thoughts in your mind. What can I give? As I walk wherever my life has led me, I often think of my father. In my mind's eye, I see a simple man who, even when he was of a great age, continued to walk every morning to his coconut grove. As I see him, I imagine how it's been almost an hour since he set off, and the caretaker of the grove is also up and going about this day. When my father walks into his plantation, the men hail each other with warmth. Perhaps Jalaluddin sits down somewhere a while. The other man climbs a coconut tree. He chooses half a dozen coconuts and cuts them down with the swing of his knife. They fall with a thump to the ground. The man quickly makes his way down. Then he proceeds to tie them up together into a neat bundle. Now the two men sit companionably for a while. They discuss the state of the trees. They peer up at the sky, talk about rains and pests and other matters of the soil. Finally, Jalaluddin picks up his bundle of coconuts, says goodbye and begins his walk back home. He will give away a few coconuts to neighbors and others. The rest will find their way into curries and chutneys prepared by my mother. I still remember sitting down to those simple meals and enjoying immensely the smooth, creamy coconut chutney with my mother placed on the leaf plate. It is a taste that has lingered in my mouth even years later, made sweeter, still knowing what it contained, the love of my parents and their honest hard work.